Hello, my name is Michelle, and you're listening to Profit is a Choice. Liz Taylor began her career as a mechanical engineer at Motorola. After 5 years in corporate America, she decided to follow her entrepreneurial spirit, and she started her first small business where she was specializing in wedding photography. And then over the past 24 years, Liz has launched on and operated several other businesses. She has been coaching since 2015. She's a certified health coach, an Enneagram coach. She has her ICF credentials, and she is also a coach in the habit finder methodology. And that's exactly what we're going to talk to her about today is habit finder. Her passion is to help high achieving business owners discover their God-given talents and passion by uncovering the thinking habits that drive their success as well as the ones that hold them back. So what is their strong place and where are the places that are weaker? And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. I was lucky enough to be able to do one of the assessments and to meet with Liz and to look at my thinking habits and really to be able to take hold of those and use them to forward me in the way that I was thinking and processing information. And that's exactly what I want for all of you. Every day, empowered entrepreneurs are taking ownership of their company financial health and enjoying the rewards of reduced stress and more creativity. With my background as a financial software developer, owner of multiple businesses in the interior design industry, educator, and speaker, I coach women in the interior design industry to increase their profits, regain ownership of their bottom line, and to have fun again in their business. Welcome to Profit is a Choice. Hi, Liz. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much.
I'm excited to talk all things Habit Finder with you. You and I met at, oh my gosh, I'm just blanked on it. It's what is the name of it?
The
The
exchange.
Exchange. Why? Oh my gosh. I should probably cut that out, but I'll leave it so people know that I forget things. But we met at the Exchange, which is a beautiful gathering once a month during, I would say, mostly the school year for women in our area. Started off, I don't know what, almost 10 years ago now, something like that, with a very small amount of women. And gosh, we had how many this year? There was one of the largest numbers. It was hundreds.
Yeah, I think on average it's around 300 or 400 now.
300 or 400 now. And it's beautiful because it's just one night a month. It's like the third Thursday of the month. And we all just get together and we usually get to connect. We play some games. There's drinks and things to eat. And then there's usually some type of a program. And Elizabeth is the one that kind of leads us through that. We have different speakers and stuff, but it's just a beautiful time for women to connect of all ages and of all backgrounds, like all kinds of things going on. Like some work, some don't work. And you and I were sitting at the table together and just were like, okay, what do you do? What do you do? Right. The normal questions that happen when you're in a group. And you told me what you did. And what was so interesting was you mentioned the book. We'll have to link the book. It's I See You. Um, and who was the author of that?
Amy Kemp.
Amy Kim. And I said, oh, I've heard of that book. I know I've heard of that book. And I came home and my listeners will laugh because I buy books all the time. It was sitting on my desk in front of me above my keyboard. And I was like, okay, that's a sign I really need to read that book because I put them on my desk if I haven't read them before I put them on my bookcase so that I have to read them and swap them out. So I have a list of 3 sitting in front of me that I have to read.
I
But
can relate.
I did. And so, but after that, you had mentioned that book and we were just kind of sharing information back and forth. And you said something about Habit Finder. And I went, huh? Huh? Tell me more. And so then I went to your website and took the Habit Finder test to kind of see. And again, I told you I have always been a follower of Strengths Finder just because it's really positive and affirming, right? And really looking at what are your strengths. But we know as business owners, we do the whole 34 because the last 5 are our blind spots. And so you started talking about, knowing your strengths are great, but knowing your habits when those two things kind of work in conjunction, man, you almost start to understand here's where I'm strong, but here are the habits that maybe created the strengths or created the blind spots or that I'm missing. And the level of self-awareness just really explodes. And I'm going to shut up now, but I'm going to say this before we jump in and talk all things Habit Finder. Share a little bit of your background with our listeners, Liz, so they kind of know like the trajectory of what you've been doing and then what brought you to being a coach and a supporter of the Habit Finder process.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yes, so Habit Finder is specifically around thinking habits. So it's a little bit different than, say, developing a healthy eating habit or whatever. But again, as we'll probably get into, thinking habits kind of direct all of those things. Um, so I started off as a mechanical engineer way back when and worked in corporate America for a few years and decided after about 5 years to open a photography studio, which seems like a complete 180. Um, and it was an exciting transition. I loved it. I loved the challenges of it. I loved the creativity of it. I did that actually with a friend. We partnered together and we did weddings and portraits and events and all of those things for many years. And then she ended up moving to Florida, and I had a couple of kids and kind of backed away from that lifestyle because, as you can imagine, it's a lot of evenings and weekends. Um, Started a kind of different but similar business in 2017 doing real estate photography and did that um, for 7 or 8 years, and then um, kind of discovered this whole coaching world. Um, a little bit through being coached and a little bit through talking to a friend who's an executive coach and kind of the tell me more. This is super interesting. I think it's one of those things that probably has always been in me as something that was interesting. I love helping other people. I love learning about the functions of the personality and the brain and all of those kind of things. And so it's this nice combination of all of that. I would say in general, I love working with small business owners because it is something that I've done for so long. And so I understand the pitfalls that can come with that, the negative thought patterns that can come from that if things don't line up as you had imagined them. As we get more into the thinking habits, we can talk about that. But most entrepreneurial spirited people have what we call a vivid visualization. So we're able to visualize the future. And the pitfall of that is sometimes we start to live in the future and not in the present. And then expectations are unmet because we've dreamed these big, wonderful dreams, which is great. So one of the things that I do is help people come back into the present, realize the steps of creation, the millimeter steps of creation to get to that target, but not stay in that, thought fantasy world of dreaming about it. So yeah.
One of the books that just comes to mind, I wrote down a couple of books while you were talking. One of them is The Gap and the Gain. And I love it because he makes the same type of comment. The gap is the difference between where we are and where we want to go, that vision. And the gain is the difference between where we are and where we came from. And we have to be careful not to compare ourselves to the future, the current us, because it starts to always make it's always going to make you feel less than. It's always going to make you feel like something's wrong, as opposed to I love how you said the millimeter steps of success, or the millimeter steps towards working towards that vision or goal. I was telling you before we came on, I went with my son and his wife and my husband to introduce our newest grandson to his great grandparents this past weekend. And my mom and I were in the kitchen, and you know how you just kind of mingle around while you're cooking and getting things ready. And we were just kind of really talking about just age and how fast things had gone. And, my mom is saying, "Can you believe you're a grandmother?" And I still sometimes see you as my little girl. And we were talking about how um our youngest grandson Cooper, like he's 6 weeks old at this point, and he's 8 weeks old, 8 weeks old. He's outgrowing his clothes. He's moving out of newborn into size 1 and all these things. And we're like, we don't visually see him grow, But every day is such a tiny change. And then all of a sudden, it's like your clothes don't fit. And we would say, the kids would be in shorts all summer, and school time would come, we'd put their clothes on. We're like, oh my gosh, you've grown 3 inches. Your clothes don't fit you. But we were talking about how the changes are so minute. And so I say that because we all recognize that when we talk about aging, or, oh my gosh, where did that wrinkle come from? That wasn't there last week. We recognize it in aging, but we don't always give ourselves room to grow in that way, in our own lives and in our business. We kind of are wanting to fast track everything, or wondering why it hasn't happened faster, or why we're not getting there, instead of kind of that steady pace of progress that will ultimately get us there if we have the right intention, we're working towards the right goals with the right information in mind. But we've got to be able to honor the process as much as the outcome.
Yes, absolutely. And find joy in that journey as well. Like that's a big piece of it is if we're focused on what we haven't accomplished or what isn't happening fast enough, obviously there's lots of frustration that comes along with that. But if we can slow down again, just get into the that creation process, realizing each step is a step in the right direction and really enjoying the journey of it as well. I mean, that's kind of what life is all about,
It
right?
changes
Because
everything. It really does. It was so funny. I read, and I've told everybody on the podcast this before, but I think it fits into our conversation so well. Back in 2019, I read the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. And it was one of those eye-opening, not that, honestly, not that anything he said was groundbreaking. But he encapsulated it in such a way that you could take it in and you could see it. And his big thing was that everything that was happening was because of a belief system. And what you believe informs what you think, and what you think informs what you do, and then what you do informs the outcome. So if you want a different outcome, you have to have a different belief system. And I think I always use his example of where he said somebody said they were a former smoker. And so I think they went out to a meal and somebody says, hey, do you want to go have a cigarette? And they had to go, oh, I'm not smoking anymore. I'm not, which is spoken as if you are a smoker, not smoking. And he shifted their perspective and said, but you're a non-smoker now. So what would a non-smoker do? A non-smoker wouldn't smoke. They wouldn't even entertain smoking. So if your belief system is that I'm a smoker trying not to smoke, you're always trying not to do something. Versus if you are a non-smoker, you're just doing what non-smokers do. And so he kind of gave this guy in the book a whole new identity by believing who he was, right? Which we could take this on a spiritual level. You could take this on so many levels. But what was so cool was then the guy said, "Oh, well, I'm a non-smoker." Oh, no, I don't smoke. I'm not a smoker, right? And then it was so easy to identify. Well, I started taking that and thinking, what would it look like? I've never been somebody that people would call an athlete. I have an athletic type body, but I've never really been an athlete. But I started thinking, what would an athlete do? An athlete would choose to eat this way. An athlete would choose to work out. So I started just trying to change my own internal belief systems around things that I wanted to do, but couldn't understand why I didn't do them. Does that make sense? Like, here's something I really want to do, but all my habits are not taking me there. They're taking me in a different direction. Like my husband laughs. I saved so many workout videos. My trainer Barbie would just be rolling her eyes. I saved so many of them, and half of them I never go do. But I save them because I want to do them. Like there's something in me that wants to go do that. And so, what I would love is for you to just talk a little bit about habits and what a habit is, and then we can move into like how a habit informs what we do. But what is a habit?
right. So, I mean, a habit is just what you do repeatedly. And like you mentioned, it becomes, and I love Atomic Habits, by the way. I think it's an amazing book. And one of the things that I think he talks about this a little bit different because of course we can talk about habit stacking. So,
Right.
hopefully you get up and brush your teeth every morning, right? So if you want to create a new habit, one way to do that is habit stacking. So say you want to take vitamins and you're not regular with taking your vitamins. So you do it with brushing your teeth because that's a habit that has already formed. You don't even think about it anymore. So that's one way that is a practical, to do
Sure.
process, right? But what I love that James talks about is like you were mentioning is that identity based habit
Yes.
where you don't think of what do I need to do or not do. You think of who am I becoming? And
That's
again,
right.
kind of that joy in the journey, it all ties in a little bit too, right? Is who am I becoming? Who do I want to identify as? And then you just do the things that somebody would do
Right.
in that identity. So I do think that's a little bit different way of thinking about
Sure.
habits, and I love it. I think it's very powerful. And then as far as the thinking habits, what's really interesting with the habit finder assessment and kind of digging into the thinking habits is I think it's like 90% of our thoughts are unconscious. And so, one analogy that I use, I love to cycle. And so I learned early on in cycling that if you want to take a corner really fast, you need to look through the turn because the bike's going to go wherever you're looking. And so if you're looking at an obstacle, your chances increase of running into that obstacle, right? Or if you're looking off the side of the turn, your chances increase of running off the road. And I think our thoughts are kind of the same way. They
Mm.
guide the direction that we're going. It could be
Yeah.
the direction of our health or of our business or of just our life in general. Um, and and the scary piece of that is, like I said, 90% of those thoughts are unconscious. They're on autopilot. And so we're essentially letting these unconscious thoughts steer us wherever they're going to steer us,
Right.
and
Right.
so that's a little bit terrifying. And so what the habit finder assessment does is it helps us recognize places where maybe those habits of thinking are a little bit out of alignment, or either over focused or under focused. And so we can work on bringing those back into balance. So it's super interesting. Um, so yeah,
What? Let me ask this. And I know we probably all know the answer, but I think it's worth just kind of touching on what forms a habit. Is it just the repetitive nature? Let's talk about a thinking habit. What sometimes are they formed just because, again, if it's unconscious, we're not consciously trying to choose the same thought every single time. Is it sometimes are they formed through kind of like our why, where they're formed through really great things? Sometimes it's formed through trauma, sometimes it's formed through unspoken things and the way that we process information and the story we tell ourselves about the information that we process. Is that what we're talking about here when we're talking about kind of these thinking habits?
absolutely. Yes,
Okay.
yes. So oftentimes it can be what life throws at us, so kind of like you said, it's a defense mechanism. Sometimes it's a thinking habit that serves us well in a season. There might be a season of life where you need to get through a certain obstacle, or fight off the enemy, whatever that looks like, kind of the fight or flight type thing. But then if you're still in that thought process or in that pattern of thinking, once you've gotten out of that situation or moved on, then it can become a sabotaging thought. And so again, awareness is really where it all begins with all of it, right?
Right.
It's taking the time in this super fast-paced world, taking the time to just kind of slow your thoughts a little bit and take a breath and even recognize what are those thoughts, what is that voice telling me about myself, and recognizing more often than not, unfortunately, the voice that is talking to us is telling us lies.
Yeah.
And so recognizing, is this truth? Is this a lie? Just like with a habit, a bad habit, typically it's going to be easier to break a bad habit if you replace it with a good habit. And so same thing with our thinking habits is if there's bad thoughts or bad untruth that we're telling ourselves,
Right.
to replace it with truth. And also, as a believer, I would certainly use scripture as part of that. um, but it can also just be as simple as recognizing that you know we're created by God and we are beautiful creatures because we're created in his image. So it almost sounds too simple in some ways, but yet
Yeah,
also
but I
really
thought the
really
same
hard.
thing with James Clear and Atomic Habits. So that's why I said I read it and I was like, This is so simple. It's interesting too. I'm currently doing a Bible study for the summer under Beth Moore. It's just like a few weeks in June on who we are. And it's about kind of um, looking at our identity in Christ and really going like, why are you acting like you used to act? Why aren't you acting like you should be acting or doing what you or believing what you should be believing? But it's because of how we see ourselves, right? We have a distorted image of how we might see ourselves. And so just looking at that, then looking at the habits and James, again, even if you took spirituality and all of that totally out of it, it's really about going back to who do we identify as for the person that we are becoming. Just as a Christian, for me, I look at my identity under the identity of Christ. Somebody else may not look at that, but it still is the same work of who were you trying to become. I had written back in my 20s, I wrote down, I was having a crisis. I was like 27, 28 years old. I was in the middle of one of my first crises of identity, really trying to, like, I was away from my mom and dad. I was married, I had a child on the way, and I was trying to figure out my life. And I remember I actually still have it, and I'm almost 60, but I had it written down that at the end of my life, this is what I wanted my friends to be able to say about me. So what I wanted my family to say about me. I wanted my best friends, my, colleagues, my husband or children or grandchildren. Like I went into each area because they would each know like a slightly different facet of me. And so I wrote down who it was I wanted to become. And then I asked myself, what do I need to do every day to become her? And it has been, I mean, it's a journey. I went back and read it probably about 2 months ago, and I was like, oh, still got some work to do on that one. Still got, but that's that idea of this is who I am and that's who I am. And are the habits that I'm building, whether it's action habits or thinking habits, and again, to your point, action comes from thinking. But are they in alignment with what I'm trying to do and where I'm trying to go? I know I'm teaching over here strategy, 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 but if our habits stop us. I'll give you a good one for an example. If we are thinking that all of our clients are out to get us, or that all of our clients are bad, or just something negative about our clients, we're going to act and react and read every email under the guise of they're out to get me, they're out to use me, they're out to hurt me. Not saying we don't protect ourselves, but we already have a predisposition to assume that that's the way they're doing things. So we're already planning our actions, whether that what they've done or not, because of our thought pattern towards that relationship. And so there may again have been a time that we needed to protect ourselves against users that were coming into our life, but it doesn't mean we need to take that thought pattern and now assign it to every relationship that is entering our business world. And so it's really recognizing. I've started asking myself, Michelle, slow down. Is this a story you're telling yourself? Where's the truth in this? What are you hearing? What are you feeling? Are you safe? What does your body feel? Like really trying to parse out what am I thinking? And is it based on truth or is it based on a prior truth that I'm assigning to this one? Do you know what I mean? It's like it's a whole thing, but it's that slowing down. And Liz, we don't do that anymore.
Oh, yes, it's unbelievable the pace at which we run. And it's so funny to me because if there was one good thing that came out of COVID, it was that we were forced to slow down.
I
And you
loved that part.
would have thought that we would have learned a lesson. And now, like, we're back at it, and I think moving at a faster pace than ever before. And I don't think it's sustainable. Like, I think, you know, I mean, I think we're seeing the um, side effects of all of that starting, and it's
Yeah.
only going to get worse. But I mean, like, how many people do you know they can't even make time to go have coffee or lunch with a friend because life is just too busy? Oh, that's crazy, you know? I mean, yeah, anyway, it's mind-boggling to me that it's
It
like
really is.
of all the lessons of all the good that, we could have taken out of that whole couple of years, why are we not
Why
learning
are
that
we
lesson?
not
And
doing that? I think
mhm.
there's a lot of fear. in some ways of slowing down and listen. Like, what would I tell myself if I allowed myself to really? Because there are even times where I think I don't even want to know what I'm thinking. Like, this is not going to be because you know why? Because I'm going to have to make a change. Because maybe something in me is going, this is not, you're not happy or you don't want to do this. And I don't even want to sit down and kind of face it, listen to that and dig into it because I know it's going to require a change on the other side.
Hmm. Well, and you had alluded to, kind of what's the story that I'm writing, and we mentioned Amy Kemp earlier. I know she said this. I don't know that she necessarily coined this, but she had said, we're all writing a story about ourselves,
Yeah.
so we might as well make it a good one.
Yeah.
We
Might as well be the one we want it to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Exactly.
but I love that. And then taking that to the business aspect of it, our business can't grow beyond our own personal growth. And so
Oh, that's a good
take
word.
yeah, so taking time to focus on ourselves, again, if I mean it's kind of the premise of you can't pour out of an empty pitcher, right? You've
That's
got
right.
to take time to fulfill yourself spiritually, emotionally, physically, if you're
All
starving
of
to
it.
death,
Yeah.
the hanger is going to come out, right?
You're
So
welcome.
taking care of your body, your soul, your spirit, because it's all going to come out, especially when we're under pressure.
That's
We can
exactly.
keep it together when everything's going great, but when we're under pressure, that's when all that stuff is going to come out, and
Yeah.
it's often not pretty.
Not pretty. Not pretty. And it's never at an opportune time that it tends to overflow. So share a little bit about the idea behind the habit finder assessment.
So it's essentially a quick 10 or 15-minute assessment. It's 18 statements that you organize from kind of best to worst. And then there's a second version, so another 18 statements. And honestly, it's pretty wild how accurate it is. I mean, I've had multiple people say, how in the world did it get all of this from me just organizing those statements? But it is actually mathematically based. Every statement has a mathematical value. And our it's broken into intrinsic values, extrinsic values, and systemic thoughts. I won't call those values, but systemic thoughts. And um, so it does provide a very accurate assessment of these thinking habits that we don't even know we're having. And like I had told you and tell everybody, is we always have access to the balanced thinking of habit. We always have access to that. So again, if you know, everything's going great, or you're on your best behavior because you're at a job interview or whatever the case may be, you're going to be in that balanced thinking of space, and things are going to be okay. But it's when the pressure comes in, we get into that pressure cooker situation, that's when those unhealthy habits can really pop their ugly head if we're not aware. um, but essentially it breaks into six different habits. Three of those are about your external world, three of those are about your internal world. And so it's connection with others. For the outer world, I'm just going to pull
Yeah.
them up so that I can well, I have them pulled up. Let me see here. There we go. So for the outer world, we have connection with others. We have physical creation, which is the creation of the internal thoughts. I'll get to that one in a second. So physical creation is the second external habit. And then structure. And structure is essentially the framework that supports what we're doing. Our internal habits are mental creation. So that's that dreaming process, which is a beautiful thing, but it's being able to create that dream and target and goals and all of that. And then personal fulfillment. So finding the joy in the journey, being able to recognize the now and the joy, and even in the work that we're doing. And then, of course, self-worth. And so it's really interesting. At the end of the day, all of these habits of thinking kind of funnel down to our self-worth, and or have an impact on our self-worth. And so, at the end of the day, that's kind of what it all boils down to. But if you don't look at these other habits of thinking, and recognize places that might be out of alignment, you're never going to be able to just improve your self-worth without recognizing all of the things that play into that.
I think back sometimes to where, like, back in the days of dating, and somebody would say, "Why do I keep finding these people who," and then they fill in the blank. Why do I keep finding myself in this situation? And a lot of times, it's really about the habits that they have been in, or the ways that relationships have worked. That they just have. It's like they have this big blind spot that they don't even see. You mentioned self-awareness earlier, and I think that is so key. But the idea that we all have the ability to be on our best behavior, and to show the values intrinsically and extrinsically in a very balanced manner. But that's why when the heat comes on and we start like losing our minds, what do? We hear it, fight or flight, all the different things. But this is looking at it more in a habit or in a thinking process. What do we do? Do we automatically feel defeated and now we quit? Or are we feeling like I'm going to fight my way through it? Now you're bullying everybody. Like, what is your thinking patterns in there? So that awareness is really, really key. And I'll tell you, I don't know. I'd be curious to see how you've seen it, but I've seen people say they didn't even know certain things they had in them until they started managing other people. When they ran the business by themselves, because they're constantly always self-tempering, and the only person they're usually mad at outside of an external vendor is themselves. But now they're paying these other people, and they're seeing other people on their team, and they're pulling out, right? That whole iron is not necessarily always sharpening that other iron. It's putting chunks in it and chips in it, and it's pulling us in a different direction. And we're being kind of all these things coming at us at one time. And that's when they're starting to see kind of elements of their thinking habits, or elements of their personhood. They're like, I really wish I didn't respond this way, or I really wish I could do things differently. Wish I didn't even think about it like that. Or do you see things like that? Like that there are certain touch points in business that start to set off like this need of either recognition or self-awareness that, wait a minute, the way that I want to become, or the way that I wish I had responded, or what I wish my, MO was right behind that is different than what actually just happened or what came out of me.
Hmm. For sure. Yeah. Um, Absolutely. And I think, again, a lot of that is based on expectations, and when expectations aren't met, how do you process that? What do what do you do with that gap between expectations and reality? Um, Obviously, one of the big markers in self-worth comes down to comparison, which is always a sneaky and unhealthy place, because there's always going to be people better than us. There's always going to be people below us in certain situations, and so comparison is never a healthy place to be. But then the tension that creates, or there's so many different ways that those thought patterns can kind of turn on us, especially if we're unaware. And so it's rewiring those thoughts, and seeing others as an intrinsically valuable creation that God created. One of the other beautiful pieces of work that we work around is, we've all been through hard things, some people much harder than others.
Sure.
But learning how to utilize those burdens that maybe we're still carrying around as a burden, but how to actually use that as a gift, and a gift for others, a gift for ourselves. And so that's a huge piece of work that I think everybody could spend some time doing, because again, a lot of times you don't even really recognize that you're still carrying around some of those burdens, oftentimes from childhood. And so, and to be fair, some of that goes way beyond my capacity, and
Right. Some of it can sometimes move into therapy. Yeah, exactly.
absolutely, absolutely.
But
But for the most
awareness, but
part,
awareness, honestly, Liz, is what's going to make us even seek out those other modalities of healing. Like we wouldn't even think to go to a therapist until I remember the first time I went to therapy, and I was just like rattling off a bunch of things. And my therapist said to me, "Oh, well, this is trauma. And I was like, what? What do you mean? No, I'm not traumatized. I just kind of get things done. This is just what happened. It just is. And she's like, no, 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 no. And so she helped me even have it. I was aware of the situation. I wasn't aware of what I was carrying with it and how it affected my body, my mind, my thought patterns, my heart racing. Like I had no idea that what I shared with her was impacting me until she showed me the connection. And then it was like my whole mind was blown at, oh, that's what that is. Okay, I had no idea. But the awareness, like even when we went through mine, because I took the assessment, and we're going to put the link for everybody to go take it's her free assessment. So go take it. But even when I took it and I looked at a couple of things and you and I sat down and talked about them, right? And I said, yeah, you said, I love the way that you do it too, because it's not accusatory. So, right, this is not a shame-based, oh, here's a bad habit you have. It's more of, again, you have access to the balance, but I can see that there's a potential swing like to this side or to that side when you're stressed. That's something to be aware of so that you can maintain balance. What was it? My therapist used to call it your window of tolerance. So she would say, where is your window of tolerance, which is right around that center of balance? Try to stay there. So what it did is it was brought to my attention. Yeah, I do know that before I might have jumped off the deep end with my thinking over here, but now I'm learning to pull it back towards center. Like I have an awareness that I tend to go 0 to 30 there. So I need to maybe take it a little bit slower. So I loved how you kind of opened up those conversations of awareness. And because a couple times I said, yep, been working on that in therapy. Yep, been working on that when I knew it. Right. So it's great for that to be able to just see what you don't see from
Yes.
18
And I think
statements.
too, I know for me, when things continue to pop up in my life, especially from different places, it's like, okay, to me, I think that that is definitely God trying to get a message to
Here's
me.
something we need to work on, Liz.
So, so yeah, so I love that when, when the habit finder assessment, because again, we just did a debrief of your results, but when it also ties into areas where you're like, yeah, that is something I am working on. I love that kind of it all meshes together and kind of refines that idea or that work that
Yeah.
you're doing. Um, and you had mentioned something about, managing others. And of course, that can obviously create all kinds of issues. It's always interesting to me in more of a corporate environment. I mean, obviously for business owners, they have the option of hiring somebody or not, right? But in the business world, or sorry, in the corporate world, you do a good job at your skill, your whatever, and therefore they promote you to a manager. Well, that doesn't always translate.
No.
Oftentimes, if you're good at a thing, you're terrible at managing other people,
Yeah.
And so that can certainly create all kinds of issues. The E-Myth is such a great book for entrepreneurs because it's okay, I'm great at baking a cake. Now I want to start a
Do I
business.
need to own a bakery?
Right. And running a bakery is totally different than making a cake. And, and then if you hire other people and then add in managing other people into that mix, and it's just a kind of disaster waiting to happen again, unless you learn those skills and learn what you're good at and all of that. But another super interesting thing that Habit Finder can do is actually compile team data into what's called a team DNA report. So each individual person takes the Habit Finder and then they can compile the team report. And so you can see kind of where your whole team might be shifting in one direction or another. And again, how might that look to your customers? How might that look to,
Right.
the work that you're doing is super fascinating.
Or do I need to hire the next person that can kind of shift our balance in another way because we need to do something? I'm curious, there was one that I did, I don't remember what it was, and you made a comment, you said, yeah, we see this in a lot of entrepreneurs. Do you start to see over time kind of, trends or things that like, oh, and in entrepreneurs, we see a lot of this, or in team members, we see a lot of this. Do you start to see things like that?
For sure. And every assessment is vastly different, as you can
Yes.
imagine. But yes, there are a couple of measurements that we would call entrepreneurial measurements. And two specifically are, I'm going to pull up your assessment again just so I can make sure that it's under, yeah. Um, so under structure, um, for entrepreneurs, they tend to be a little bit resistant to discipline. And as you can imagine, that's a good thing. You know, if you're just going to follow the rules and fit in the box, you're probably not going to be as creative or be
Right.
able to,
Entrepreneurial.
think outside the box. And then the other one is as far as your thinking habits. Um, it's kind of an obsessive thinking, and again it seems counterintuitive,
Yeah.
um, but it's kind of that ability to be an independent thinker, and again, as you can imagine, it can take you into the ditch if you're not careful, but you learning how to utilize
How to
the
harness it.
fact. Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
um because again, as an entrepreneur, you need to be able to think outside the box. You need to be able to think creatively and
Yeah. Go against the flow a little bit, try new things. I think that's what's so nice too is again, this is not a good or a bad. It's just here's what balance look like. And you have a natural tendency to swing this way. And I remember hearing all the way back when I was a young girl in school, like, was it your greatest gift is also your greatest curse? There were things that they would say, and you'd be like, yeah, yeah, oh, yeah, that's so deep. I didn't really understand it, but now I get it because some of these things, like you said, left unprotected or uncared for or unrecognized could take you into a ditch. That looking into the ditch is going to take you into the ditch. But sometimes you do have to look over there to see the deer that's about to cross the road so that you don't hit it. So there is a time that you're going to be glancing and looking and knowing how to pull back. So it's recognizing what your natural tendencies are and then asking, like even me, since we've done this, I'm even asking the question of myself, is this my natural, am I doing this because it's my natural tendency or because I truly believe this is what I should be doing? Because I'm catching myself and just asking about my thinking. And I think I love this new idea of, wait a minute, what am I thinking? I was talking to Katie McDonald. She's been on another podcast, and one of the things she was talking to us about was nourishing our bodies and our minds and our souls and taking care of ourselves, and setting up good habits for self care. And, there was a moment when I walked out of my office and I thought to myself, I really want to go sit down. I'm so tired, but I need to work out. And I stopped and asked myself, because I could tell my thinking habit was getting ready to get in the way of my action habit. Like I knew it was all crossing up. And I stopped and I said to myself, what is the next best thing you could do for Michelle? And I thought, I need to go walk for about 20, 30 minutes. I need to just start there. Well, what was interesting is I went downstairs, I put on my good old, menopausal weighted vest and got onto my treadmill and started walking. And by the time I got off my treadmill, I thought, well, while I've got this vest on, I should go ahead and move a few weights. So then I started moving some weights. And then I'm like, well, now it's time to bridge. I got to take it off. But just asking myself, and not my original thought was to go sit down. My thinking habit would have been, you deserve to rest, go rest. But that was not for the Michelle that I'm trying to become. And so it was just interesting how they all start to go together after a while I could catch it and go, wait a minute, why am I thinking that? And is that what I want to be thinking right now? And just realizing I have access to change my thoughts.
hmm absolutely,
Like,
yeah,
what a
that's
power is that? Like, sometimes we
exactly.
think we're stuck in this way of thinking instead of going, wait a minute, I don't like that thought. I'm going to change that. Like, talk about creation. I can just create whatever thought I want. I mean, certainly it's got to pass the test of time and, make some level of sense. But just the idea that we can change to make something better in our thoughts before any action occurs is pretty amazing.
Right, right. And to your point, just taking that little step of action oftentimes leads to progress and more action and whatever. I mean, I certainly have had plenty of those days where it's like, oh man, I do not want to work out, or I don't want to do the bike ride, or whatever. And I'll go get on the bike. If I can ride outside, it's great, but sometimes I have to be on the trainer, which is not nearly as fun. And the first 10 minutes might be miserable, but then, like you said, then you start kind of feeling better. Or sometimes I don't. Like sometimes I get on and I'm like, I just don't feel good today, and so you know what, I'm going to cut it right here, 20 minutes in. It is what it is.
Yeah,
And so, but again, being true to yourself, being aware, seeing the fact that you even took the effort to give it a try as a win, versus I'm not even going to try that today. I'll wait
that's
till
right.
tomorrow. And so yeah, rewarding yourself, even if that win didn't turn out the way you thought it was going to, if it was better than the original plan or the original thought, I think that's worth celebrating.
Oh,
I think it's worth
absolutely.
celebrating even those little
The
ones that don't turn
millimeter
out
wins.
exactly. Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
so let me ask you this. After somebody does a habit finder assessment, they can have a discovery call with you and start talking through it. What do you do in your coaching? So if somebody has done habit finders and they've got their list of habits, because it's not therapy. We're not talking about therapy. It is kind of therapeutic, not going to lie. I mean, just kind of like my coaching is therapeutic for the business. It's very therapeutic to get in there and start thinking about it. But what does the journey look like to coach somebody through, and what is the outcome that they're trying to achieve if they've been coached through their habits?
Yeah, great question. So I offer a couple of options. A couple times a year, I'll start a group of people who want to go through the curriculum. So there's a curriculum around those 6 areas, 6 habits of thinking. And of course, the group is going to be a little bit less personal, but it's great because then you can have other people in on the Zoom call, or if we were to meet in person. Typically, I do most things on Zoom, but you get to meet other people who are on the journey, and
Mhm.
um, and I
I
love
love that because you get to talk about
connecting.
it.
Exactly. And you get to connect with people who are also on this self growth journey. And, to me, connecting true connection with other people is just a gift. And so I love creating a place where that can happen. For individual coaching, we can either utilize the curriculum and stay pretty true to it, and or deviate as necessary. So a lot of times we might be in the curriculum, but something happens with their business or their kids, or I mean whatever the case may be, and we just need to deviate that day. So the nice thing about individual coaching is we can deviate as much
Right.
as needed, and take time, to to go to those places that are kind of the house is on fire type situation.
Yeah.
um, and then the other coaching that I offer is really more of an accountability coaching. And so I'm call it Momentum Minutes with Liz, and it's literally just 15-minute sessions. And it's all about just accountability to get that next step done. And so 15-minute session, what's the homework that you want to agree to? All right, go do it. Once you get that done, book another 15 minutes. And so it's that accountability to literally.
Right. I know I'm going to have to check in, so I better get it done. What is the outcome that people are trying to achieve when they're going through this journey and process of looking at their habits?
I think the outcome, I mean, it's kind of individual for certain people. I think in general, people don't think about getting coached unless they've bumped up against something. So it can be anything from, my business just isn't growing as quickly as, let me say it this way. Oftentimes it's that unmet expectation. So whatever that looks like, if it's the business isn't growing as fast, or, something happens with an employee, and, now I've got to go find somebody else, or
Why does this keep
there's some.
happening or something? Yeah.
Right, right. But almost always when people get to the point that they're looking for help, it's because of that unmet expectation. And so then
Mhm.
it's discovering, okay, was the expectation unrealistic? Were your actions did they have anything to do with it? Did the thinking habits have anything to do with it? So it's kind of diving into all of those things. It might play out in relationships, it might play out in business, it might, just play out in, I can't make myself work out. I don't know what's going on. I really want to make this change, but I'm not making this change. Um, so that is when people typically would reach out. Now, I would argue that, wait, don't wait until that's the case.
Yeah.
I think everybody can use an accountability partner for whatever life throws at you. But the outcome is they're looking for um just a smoother process, a way to not see that disappointment every time whatever rolls around. And so again, sometimes it might be changing the expectations, sometimes it might be changing the approach to actually be able to create that expectation. um, but that's really the main result that they're looking for, is getting rid of that gap between expectations and reality. um,
I wrote
does
down
that
a
make sense?
word when you were talking about that the first time, and I just wrote down the word disappointment. And I think from my own life and from a lot of people that I've seen, a lot of us aren't, we've lost the skill of how to handle disappointment, that unmet expectation. And really, again, slowing down enough to dig into why is it happening and what is happening and what is my part in it, what is not my part in it. Because it's not saying any of it's all our fault, but what part did we play so that if we want, like I tell people all the time, you can give me that P&L and I can read it for you. I can tell you everything it said, but we can't affect change by looking at the P&L because the P&L is telling me every choice you've already made. So if we don't like it and we want to make different outcome, we have to make different choices going into the next version of the P&L that we look at. And I think this is the same way. If there are areas of our life, like you said, that we either are uncomfortable with, we're wondering why we keep doing the same things, we've run into the brick wall, we've got the knot on our head, we don't want to do it again. Maybe there's a tension, an interpersonal tension somewhere that keeps popping. Oh, we're fighting with somebody at the PTA, and oh, we have this problem with this person on our team, or we're starting to see um, patterns and consistencies, but not always to our advantage or to the way that we would hope that it would have happened or worked out, then that's really a good time to stop and say, wait a minute, what are the habits that I'm bringing into this situation? And are they the habits that are going to support what I need to get out of it or where I'm going? And I think that's what was so powerful to me about doing the assessment and working with you on some of it was just even that. I mean, even now I'm still asking the questions. Is this a supportive way of thinking? Is this a story I'm telling myself? Does it make me feel better, but it's not truth? Or does it not make me feel good, but it is true? Like what is happening here, as opposed to just taking it for what it is and moving forward? And I got to say, in a time where you can watch the news on two different stations that will tell you the polar opposite of each other, and where you've got AI coming up and creating a bunch of stuff, you don't even know what the truth is and what to believe. At least I've been seeing this since 2019. It's caused a whole crisis for me of trying to figure out what is true and what is not true and what to believe and what not to believe and where do you get good information. The last thing I want to do is not be able to trust my own thoughts and feelings because I don't even understand them. And I'm just kind of going with things instead of stopping and mentally processing for myself. So I love the pause and process part of this habit finder discovery. I know what my strengths are. Why would I not know what my habits are? And then I can merge them together and make sure that I am working in all of the strength that Michelle was created to bring to the table.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so wise because, again, I think back to that curse and blessing at the same time, right? I feel that way about
Yeah.
AI. I think it's an incredible tool and also it's completely terrifying. Um, and especially when you put it on, onto the media in the way that
Yeah.
they can create whatever they want at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, so can anybody. And but I love what you said, to kind of pause and say, can I even believe myself? Can I even believe these thoughts that I'm having? because yeah, like how in the world are you ever going to trust anybody else or believe anything else out there if you don't even trust
Not about
yourself or
this
know if you can
yourself.
believe yourself. Yeah, that
Yeah.
is a really insightful way to look at it.
Yeah. So, Liz, tell everybody where they can find out more about you. And if they wanted to take the quiz, where could they go to take that?
So my website is coachliztaylor.com, hopefully easy to remember. Liztaylor. So on that, there will be, you should see right off a place to just take the assessment. It's a free assessment. I will get a notification when you take it and reach out to you. I will do a free call with you to go over the results because it is a little bit easier if somebody kind of goes through and explains.
Yeah. Yeah. It was very helpful.
Yeah, and I enjoy doing that, so I'd love to do that. There's also links to other resources at that site. So yeah, that is the easiest way to reach out. On there, there's also links to social media and all that good stuff, but that's probably the easiest way to get to all of that.
Awesome. We'll put that in the show notes then. And I hope everybody goes in and takes it because I really think that, gosh, if I could work with a bunch of other people, if we were all interacting with each other and understanding our thought patterns and our habits and of thinking and of action, and we could all work towards being balanced when we need to be balanced, I mean, we'd be a lot kinder to each other and to ourselves in general if we just
Absolutely.
understood what was happening to us. So, I really appreciate you
Absolutely.
offering this and bringing it to the forefront.
Well, thank you so much for introducing me to your audience and trusting me with that. And I hope that people will reach out. I would love to meet your crew of folks. And yes, I agree. It has become truly a passion to help everybody just live into the best versions of themselves. Because, like you said, it makes us individually better, but more importantly, it makes us as a community better. And that is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I'd much rather live that way. Well, Liz, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Liz, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. If you guys are interested in finding out more, please check out, the assessment to determine the habits that drive you, and you can see that at coachliztaylor.com. As always, think about the fact that profitability is about more than just your financial statements. Knowing how we think and how we react and how we choose to work is also important. And that's why I really love the work that Liz is doing. Creating a strategy for your company is also important. We talked a lot on the podcast about kind of envisioning who you want to be and who you want to become. And that's the same thing that we're doing over here at Scarlet Thread is we're trying to help you vision and determine what your business is becoming so that we can align all the actions with that. We can align your financials, your marketing, your operations, your HR, all of those other internal processes so that at the end of the day, you get the business that you desire. We would love to talk to you. So fill out a discovery form at scarletthreadconsulting.com and reach out and let's see how we can connect. As always, remember, think profitably because profit doesn't happen by accident. Profit is a Choice is proud to be part of the designnetwork.org, where you can discover more design media reaching creative listeners. Thanks for listening and stay creative and business minded.